right, looks like your boy Nick Shirley has another fraud that he's uncovered. I like this guy's videos. Look, he's trying. He's just a kid. Just a kid. Who's trying his darndest to uncover what he thinks is the biggest fraud in American history, which is hilarious. But let's hear this clip because the fact that anyone takes any of this seriously is hilarious to me because, yes, is he uncovering potential fraud? Of course. I mean, there's a ton of fraud. I mean, anytime people build a government for anything, there's going to be a remnant of them that will commit fraud. But the fact that he is sort of just gassing up the kind of fraud that he's uncovered in Minnesota is just hilarious to me. Because anyone who's ever studied or delved into all the kind of fraud that has occurred in America, for that matter, let alone anything related to government services, this is nothing. But anyways, let's take a look at his video.
When a Somali goes to the doctor, magically they forgot how to speak English, so they needed an interpreter there. So the county brings in an interpreter at $100 an hour, minimum 8 hours, to interpret what the doctor is telling the patient.
So that's another layer of fraud that nobody's even talked about or revealed.
And it's millions and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars all on its own. Interpreter services.
Yeah, because what percentage do you think of these people, especially if they were born here in the United States, they speak English, right?
Of course they do.
They should not be saying no English.
And then remember, the interpreter has to get to the doctor's office or the hospital. How are they getting there? The transportation company, and then they got to get back home. And that patient had to get to the doctor's office. How? Transportation. Kids got to get to school. How? Transportation. That's why I said the transportation is the hub of, really, I think, all of this.
So basically what we're talking about between all these fraudulent businesses, the daycare, the autism centers, the adult daycare, the home services, and then the transportation, and then on top of that you have it looped in with them going eventually to the doctors for translators to be paid by the state.
That's exactly what's happening, yes.
And click right here to see what happened.
Okay. So Nick Shirley and this stranger that he's always running around with is basically saying that, yes, the transportation mechanism that the Somalis are allegedly using is done so to facilitate more fraud throughout Minnesota, which is hilarious. That in fact, as this gentleman states, that the transportation is actually the hub of all of the fraud that is occurring. It's central to the fraud, right? Because you can take someone from their home to one of the daycares, which again, the daycare is allegedly a fraudulent daycare, or you can take someone to an adult daycare or a senior living center, or to a doctor's office, at which point there's an interpreter at the doctor's office, and that interpreter is getting paid a bunch of money because the Somalian is allegedly saying that they don't speak English. And Nick Shirley somehow is like, well, if you're born in this country, you should be able to speak English, right? Yeah, but you don't have to be born in this country to be a citizen. So, anyways, this let me put it this way: Nick Shirley's entire fraud uncovering of Minnesota was completely strategically aligned to this administration's goal and aim to cause terror and really chaos in Minnesota. I mean, if you think about the timeline, right? Like the first big breakout of his first, video around Minnesota and the quote unquote daycare frauds, shortly after that, ICE agents went into Minnesota. And then, as we all know, an individual American citizen was actually shot and killed in Minnesota in the midst of all of those ICE raids. So this is all sort of a part of the greater overarching strategy that the administration has to impose fear and terror and really inevitably chaos in certain parts of America. And they're really using Nick Shirley as a way to sort of marketing campaign to Americans so that Americans can basically grow and have disdain for a particular group that ICE will then target. So you'll see that pattern probably emerge a little bit more so even this year as they rally up, maybe through Nick Shirley or other folks in the media, they'll rally up more disdain or anger or resentment towards a particular group or demographic, whether it's religious group. In this case, it's an ethnic group and slash religious group that they sort of target with these campaigns, and then the government will swoop in with actual enforcement via ICE or something else. That's what you're seeing. That's the pattern. It's clear as a bell. Like the fact, and I think someone actually questioned Nick Shirley on this the other day. They're like, "Hey, like, did you work with the White House? Because it's somewhat of a coincidence that shortly after your video became incredibly viral, the ICE agents came into Minnesota." And he was like, "Well, no, I don't know anything about that," and blah blah blah. Okay, yeah, whatever. He might not even know anything about that, but this administration surely will boost his video to ensure that it's viral, so that Americans can have some sort of disdain or resentment towards a particular group that the government will then target, and put that targeting on display to ramp up chaos. That's the whole point. The whole aim and inevitable goal is to rally up and ramp up chaos. And as I explained in my other video, chaos is just sort of this chapter that America has to pass through in order to enable and support the incoming regime that will then sort of take the reins from Trump. And that regime will be effectively elected, or really American citizens will actually want that regime in response to having endured Trump's tenure or term as president. But it's all a setup basically to get the next sort of president regime in office, and Americans will essentially be behind that because we would be advocating and voting for that type of president in the regime that is to come. So yeah, funny. Nick Shirley. Ugh.
I'm still learning.